One of the most common struggles that people talk to me about is loneliness. Whether it be college students, singles, people my age, adults who are new to a community, they talk about just how hard it is to find friends. And it made me start to think, why is friendship so hard? We have been built by God for community. He has built within us a desire to be known and for someone to see us for who we are and to love us. And so we see this put out in the book of Acts. And so I want us to define community from Scripture. And so in Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47, it says this: "And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts. They're praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved." And so I just want to break this down for us. It says that they devoted themselves to a list of things. First, the apostles' teachings. They devoted themselves to collectively studying what it was that the apostles of Jesus had said. It says they devoted themselves to fellowship, to spending time together, to the breaking of bread. There's two different examples that we could see here. One would be taking of communion or the Lord's Supper, and the other could be they ate meals together. It says they were devoted to prayer and they had all things in common. I want you to think about this. If we as Christians lived our lives this way, if we saw that we had everything in common, what would it look like? It says they sold their possessions and belongings and they distributed the proceeds to whoever had need. Just think about that. What kind of a picture does that paint about Christian community to the rest of the world? They attended temple together. And again, it says that they gathered for meals in their homes and they had glad and generous hearts. And because of all they saw God was doing in and around them, they were praising God. And here's the thing, the people that were around them, that were watching them, it says that they had favor with all the people. And just by the way they lived their life, because they looked different, God added to their number day by day those who were being saved. So just think about that. If Christians today, if we lived our lives just by this example, think how different we would look within society. If we were devoted to our other believers, if we lived in such a way that we were meeting needs, we were breaking bread together, I think the outside world would take notice. And in Acts 4:32, once again, we see the same idea brought back in. It says, "Now the full number of those who believed were of one heart and one soul, and no one said that any of the things that belonged to him was his own, but they had everything in common." They were of one heart and one soul. Think about that. That means that they handled conflict in such a way that it didn't drive them apart, but it actually knit them together closer. And once again, they didn't see their possessions as their own. They saw them as a means to meet needs. And so we're seeing, just by the way they live their life, that they're giving testimony to who God is, to the way that God has blessed them, because they in turn are blessing others. It says that there's no needy person among them. And so we see these glimpses of community. And then we see in Proverbs 27 verse 17, it says, iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. To me, I don't know a whole lot about science. I read books and write for a living. And as you dive into this is what it's talking about is iron. The only way to sharpen iron, it's one of the hardest metals, is to literally use iron to do it. And he's saying right here, the reason that we need community is because we begin to look more like Jesus. This process of sanctification, it happens when we rub elbows with others who are not like us. Think about it. Anytime you've been a part of a Christian group, there's going to be that one or two people that are just a little bit more difficult for you to get along with. Maybe it's just not as comfortable. And so what we see here is in those moments of us rubbing elbows, of us living life, close life, with people that are different than us, we're going to be forced to deal with conflict. We're going to be forced to think about someone else's opinion. We literally have no choice but to think through what does it look like for us to live life in such a way that we're one heart and one soul. Now, I don't think this means that they agreed on everything, but I do think that this means that they didn't let conflict get in the way of how they loved one another. Just for the fact that they're sitting across the table and they recognize, okay, you may believe differently than I do or may think about this in a different way. They didn't let that difference get in the way of how they saw someone. Think about what that could look like today. If Christians, if we loved other people like that, I can't imagine what that would look like. I think it would change lives. And so we've got these pictures of friendship, community, and what the Bible says this is what it should look like. And I don't know about you, I'm 40 years old, but I've had very few examples of this. And like I said, the question that I want us to think about is, why is friendship so hard? I think right now we've seen a lot of shifts in culture. We live in communities that are more isolated. We are in a pandemic where we literally are isolated. And we're in situations where technology, social media, all of these things have gotten in the way of us really making relationships and connecting with someone face to face. Instead, we're communicating over text message or even over Instagram or a tweet. And so what could it look like if we were to say, okay, those are fine, but I want to step into this face-on-face relationship that the Bible tells me about. And so I want us to dive into a couple of things. We're going to get to what friendship is, but before we do that, I think we need to talk about what friendship is not. And so I want to just kind of pave a way for us to think about community and friendship. And I think we have to make sure that we displace some certain things that I think hinder us from having healthy relationships. First, people cannot satisfy us. They can't satisfy us, but they can support us, they can encourage us, and they can love us. I don't know if any of you are old enough or have seen the movie Jerry Maguire. I'm not recommending it, but there is a line in the movie where the main character, Jerry Maguire, is saying to his wife, "You complete me." And I believe that that broke relationships. Because now people were starting to think like, I need someone who can complete me. I need someone who can make me happy, fill every need. And there's no person on the world that can do that. I am recently married. In fact, in a couple of months we will have been married for a year. And if I was to look at my husband Randall to meet every need, I am placing him in a role that he cannot meet. And so I think it's really important for us to recognize that. There was one day, he had a lot of homework that he had to do. And I was struggling. I lost my brother a little over a year ago. And there are moments when grief just hits. And we were around the 1-year anniversary of his death. And there was just some stuff that was just really, really hard for me that day. And my husband knew it. And it was breaking his heart that he couldn't just walk away from his homework and come and just hold me. But he had stuff that had to get done that day. And I looked at him and I said, yes, I'm hurting. But it's not your job to fix that. And I said, I just need to go lay down and cry. And in that moment of just being reminded that the Lord was going to meet me there. And as soon as Randall was done, he came and he just held me. But I think it helped him to know in this moment, would I love to have you right next to me? Yes. But you don't have to fix this. That's not your job. I need the Lord to step into this pain. And so in that moment, I think I showed him, I love you and I know you love me, but I'm not expecting you to make this go away. And so from that example, I hope that you'll start to think about, like, our satisfaction can only be found in God. So that means our hope, the things that will fulfill us, make us feel whole, will only be found in God. And so that means as Christians, our identity must be found in being a child of God and not in a relationship, a friendship, or even the approval of others. So like I said, first, people do not complete us. I think second, we have to have realistic expectations. What is the role of a friend? What is the role of community? I think, like I said, it's to offer support, encouragement, and love. And so what I mean by this, I'm just going to use the example of when my brother passed away. It's an extreme example, but I got to learn a little bit more about the role of community. The day we found out, one of my friends came over and she's like, what can I do? So she ran some errands for me. The next day, someone came over and brought dinner just to sit with me. And then as we go, and I ended up doing the funeral, and I wrote the obituary, and just my fiance and I, at that point, we weren't married, we did a lot of the responsibilities. And during that time, as I'm writing and preparing, I'm emailing my notes to other people just to get their feedback. A friend of mine paid for my hotel room. Like, there was just some of those things that I got to see people stepping in and loving me while praying for me, reaching out and making sure that I knew I wasn't in this by myself. So when we are looking to someone for their encouragement and their support and their love, we have to make sure that we are not becoming codependent. And what I mean by that is when dependency is when we look for one person to meet our needs, and then that makes all other relationships unnecessary. So this means that your emotional sense of well-being is tied to another person. Your security is being found in them instead of God. And so in that, this is something I've seen a lot. And I think it's important for us to recognize. And I've asked myself, if I was to lose this person, like if this friendship went away, how would that impact my life? Yes, it would be hard and it would be sad, but it shouldn't be devastating. And so what we want to make sure is to think through, like, how is this friendship in my life? Where have I placed it? Where is the hierarchy? What is supreme? What is the relationship in my life that I am placing my hope in? And I think another thing that we have to keep in mind when it comes to realistic expectations, it cannot be controlling or based on fear. And so we must then look into say, is this friendship, is this relationship healthy? Or is there controlling aspects? Is there manipulation? Am I still this person's friend because of fear? So we've said people don't complete us. We must have realistic expectations. And I want us to talk about identity, because I think a lot of times our relationships go wrong because we don't have a true understanding of identity. What is identity? At the heart of what it means to be a Christian is to receive a new identity. And what this means, that in Jesus, we do not lose our true selves, but we become our true selves only in Him. Because Christ is our life. Not only do we get the guarantee of heaven, but we see that the down payment of it by the Spirit now as He lives in us. So His joy, the Spirit's joy, Jesus' joy becomes our joy. His love becomes our love. His peace, our peace. And His strength, our strength. And so my identity can be found in those things. When I walked through my brother Scott's death, I remember sitting in the car crying and saying, okay, I was the oldest of two brothers. How do I even say that now? Like, do I say when someone asks, do I have siblings, do I say I have two brothers? Or do I say I have one? And then it was just like this part of my life that I had lived for 37 years was gone. And so I was even wrestling in those moments with figuring out, okay, who am I now? And then being able to remember my identity, who I am, is first and foremost a daughter of God. And so because of that, in the midst of my pain, there was still elements that could provide joy. And that happened by the people who loved me. They were displaying God's love to me. They were displaying his peace, and God was providing strength in ways that I never imagined. And so my hope is that you start to think about what friendship is. You have to start with what it is not. And here's the thing. As Christians, we are citizens of heaven. And we see this in the book of Philippians. And it says, in Christ, we must understand that we are fundamentally new and belong to the people of heaven. So this means that our values, the customs and expectations that are found in this world begin to feel increasingly foreign to us. And that just means that the things of the world mean nothing. There's a song that was put out by Caedmon's Call, and it says, this world has nothing for me, but this world has everything. And I think that there's so much truth there. Because as we look around, this world is telling us, you want this or this or this. If you have these things, it's going to meet every single need. But the Bible tells us that's not true. The second you get a new phone, you realize, oh, that didn't meet that need. The second you get a new relationship, oh, that didn't meet that need. A lot of times I meet girls who are just saying, when I get married, then this will happen. That's not true. I was single for 39 years. And now, as someone who's married, I can say, yes, it's great to have a partner, but it hasn't fixed everything that I thought marriage would fix. And so I think it's important for us to just recognize those truths. And so I think also when you talk about what is the relational reality of today, we live in a world that is not orientated towards relationships anymore. We are oriented towards ambition and success and money. And these things do not make us happier. And yet we live in a world that does not have time for relationships. We say we're lonely, but we don't make time for others. And so I think it's important to recognize that that is part of the truth. Tim Keller says this. He says, everyone says they want community and deep friendship. However, because it takes accountability and commitment, we run the other way. Because it's hard, we run. We don't want to step into something that's hard. I think it's important for us first to recognize community is not convenient. It takes commitment. Also, we often want to pick the friendships that don't hurt us or rub us the wrong way. And I want to tell you something, even with the friends that I have, that we just have so much fun together, there will always be some moments that are just hard. So that perfect relationship doesn't exist. So quit looking for it. Another quote by Tim Keller, he says, people are messy, therefore relationships will be messy. Expect messiness. I think one of the things that was most helpful for me when I was getting married was recognizing we were taking two sinful people and throwing them into a house. And so as we were both older and we had lived alone for a long time, and now we were trying to figure out what does this look like to live together. My husband was moving things around in the kitchen. I couldn't find things. I'd lived in this house for over 7 years, and all of a sudden I felt like a stranger in my own home. And then just starting to recognize like, that was okay. He was making this house his as well. But in those things, being able to see the messiness, like my husband has to deal with the trauma and the pain and the hurt that has happened in my earlier life, just like I have to deal with his. And what that means is we're walking through it together. We're trying to communicate, and we don't always handle it very well. We call those moments bumps. And we do that because you can get over any bump. And we want each other to know we're on the same team. No matter what this is, no matter how hard this moment is, it doesn't change that I love you. We will forgive quickly, and we will get through this bump. And so relationships, even the best ones, are messy. And so because of that, we approach friendships and relationships specifically looking for what is in it for me. Can you meet this need? Can you make me happy? Can you make me laugh? Can you make me become more a part of the in crowd? And that is the wrong way to look at friendship. And so I want to talk about why do we need friends and what does the Bible say about that? You see, friendship provides just a vital aspect of maintaining godly focus. Friends have a profound influence on us and on the way we think and behave. So we must be careful and wise when it comes to our choice of companions. Exodus 23:2 says, You shall not fall in with the many to do evil, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit, siding with many, so as to pervert justice. He's saying, listen, avoid those who do evil. Proverbs 13:20 says, Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Who are those people? Are you walking with those that are going to help you grow in your wisdom? Or are you walking with those that are only going to lead you into foolishness? In Psalms 1, verses 1 and 2 says, Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. I am the chaplain of the UNT women's basketball team. And one of the things that I have noticed that is very different than what I'd ever expected is how separate they keep the student athletes from the rest of campus culture. And I started to really try to think through, why are they doing that? It's because of the investment they've placed in these players. They are giving them scholarships, and they have brought them here because of some unique gifting. And in a lot of ways, it's like they keep them isolated. And that can be beneficial, but at the same time, it can also hurt their experience and their time on campus. And I started to really think through the difference between when something is insulated, when it's surrounded by something that is helping keep the climate a certain way, or when it's isolated. And I started to think about those basketball players. They're insulated by all of these people that are trying to make sure that they succeed. But a lot of times they're not looking to help them find community outside of the athletic world. And that can be really, really difficult. In fact, it kind of reminds me of a pint of ice cream. I think ice cream is one of the best desserts ever invented. If you take a pint of ice cream and you stick it in an ice chest, it's insulated. And so it's going to help it stay cold longer. But if you take it and you leave it out on the counter, it's isolated. It doesn't have anything that is going to help it remain the way that it was made to remain. It's not going to stay cold. It's the same thing with us. We need to insulate ourselves, surround ourselves with people who love the Lord and are pointing us back to Him. But when we isolate ourselves, that's when sin tends to increase. That's when loneliness tends to increase. And in those moments, I've found that oftentimes when we are lonely, we begin to seek out things to meet that need, and it only leads to more pain and more hurt. Because nothing of this world is going to satisfy us. So you have to decide, what kind of friendships are you going to cultivate? Will they build you up, or will they drag you down? Will they encourage your walk with God, or lead you away from Him? So that was a long introduction to get to what is friendship. I want to give you a friendship definition that I hope is helpful and stays with you throughout the rest of your life. Friendship is any relationship between two people where they both feel seen in a safe and satisfying way. So let's break that down. So both people feel seen. That means that they feel they can be who they are. They don't have to hide. They don't have to pretend. It means it's not only safe to just be me, but it's even, I can be vulnerable. I can be real and raw, and I can show you what's going on in my life because I know you're going to see me in that. And I can do that because it's safe. Safe is only built through consistency. It's based on history and experience. You see, as there is consistency in the friendship, safeness is formed. So it's going to take some time for that consistency to happen. It's easiest to be vulnerable with the ones who have been most consistent with us. And the more consistent a friend is, the safer we can feel with them. So for us to feel seen, ultimately, there has to be safety. And that safety is going to just take some time. We have to be patient. And this last one is also extremely important. And it says that they are seen and safe in a satisfying way. Satisfied means that the relationship, the friendship is positive. That this relationship brings joy. The positives are going to outweigh the negatives. There will never be, like I said before, a relationship in your life that won't have some aspects of negatives in it. but you want the positives to far outweigh those negatives. And so what we have to remember is positivity and connectivity impacts consistency. So in those friendships where we are looking to say, okay, is this healthy? Is this positive? Are we having a good time? Are we laughing more than we're upset? Is this person pointing me more to Jesus or not? And so that is how we should evaluate our friendship. So a friendship is any relationship between two people where they both feel seen in a safe and satisfying way. So let's talk about consistency. We thought friendship happened automatically when you were younger because consistency happened automatically when we were younger. Think about school when you were growing up. We didn't have to initiate meeting each other at school or the next day because we knew we were just going to be there. We went every day, we hung out. So you logged the hours with those friends in a way that didn't involve initiation or scheduling. I mean, just think about it. You probably sat next to the same people. The ones who were in the same activities as you, that was where your friendships were formed. And the amount of time you spent with them helped take care of the consistency aspect of the friendship equation. And so that's one of our main struggles. I wish someone would have told me that friendship would look different as an adult. And the main reason is because now I have to figure out how to put consistency in place. And there's only two ways really to increase consistency, and they're hard. I want to be honest with you, especially as someone who's an introvert. We join something that is consistent. So where we can just show up, it's not scheduled, so that could be church, a job, an organization, a book club, whatever that may be. It's on the schedule and we know we're going. And the other is we have to schedule it ourselves. And this is where most friendships fail. You see, it doesn't require as much consistency to maintain a friendship as it does to get it going. So let's talk about initiation. Many of us are just not comfortable with initiating. And even if we do it once, and now when that didn't work out, we say the ball is in their court. But you see, friends, most friendships die because one person got too busy and the other person was afraid of being rejected. And it was afraid of what it would mean if they reached out again. And so because of lack of initiation, most friends, those friendships don't get off the ground. And one of my closest friends here in Denton, she's a mom and she's busy. She works a part-time job, and it's just hard for her to always to think about, oh, I want to hang out with Stephanie. She'll think about it, but it's hard for her to text me. And I told her, that's fine, I'll initiate. And because of that, me being willing to initiate and to make sure those things happen, we have just a great friendship where she has met needs, she stepped into spaces, she is a safe and a consistent friend. But it took me recognizing, because of the season of life she's in, I'm going to have to do most of the initiation. And I was okay with that because she was worth that to me. And so lastly, I want to talk about practical applications for building community. First off, it's not about who is my friend, but how I can be a friend for people. I'm looking around and saying, how can I meet needs? How can I show up for someone? Instead of me only looking at people for the purpose of them meeting my needs. Being able to also understand that community involves more than one other person. We need a group of people because not everyone can be there all the time and support us. And so you need to build a circle of friends to have support. If you're basing your life on a codependent relationship and something happens and that person can't be there, it's going to break and it's going to hurt. But if we have a big circle of friends and community that can step into those spaces, we're not placing all of those expectations on one person. The day I found out that my brother died, my husband was, at that point, fiance was working an hour and a half away. And he couldn't get to me until he got off work. But he started calling my friends, and they started coming. And because I had that network of support, I wasn't sitting in that pain alone. And he was able to get there when he got off, and he stepped into that space. So they kind of took turns. And I think that's what community is supposed to look like. Okay, so now let's talk about the secret to lasting friendship. You must become someone who wants to see the people around you flourish. You should want to look in to see what are the things that they love. What are the things that they hope for? And how can I best encourage them and support them to do those things? One thing that I really appreciate about my husband is I'm currently pursuing a PhD. And he has literally said, I'm going to leverage my life and do all that I can during the season to make sure that you can pursue this dream that the Lord has called you to. And so he may take up more of the house burdens so that I can spend more time studying. And that's what this looks like. He wants to do everything he can to help me flourish into who God has created me to be. So we must also, so you can have lasting friendships, remember, don't just view friendships as a means to an end or a means to comparison. If I can look at my neighbor and figure out how to serve them, it's a relief too, because you're not having to think about yourself. So look around, figure out how can I meet needs. And that means we have to be a show-upper. And so what I mean by that is we must show up for our friends. And so ask yourself, am I someone that my friends can count on? And so that also means we have to be present. We need to be where you are. Be all in with your people. And when you're with your friends, do they feel like you're right where you want to be? One thing that I try to do is to leave my phone sitting someplace else when I'm with people. When my husband and I go out to eat, we love to play rummy. It's a card game. And so we'll take a deck of cards and we'll be playing because we are interacting, because we don't want to sit at a table and just be scrolling through our phones. We want to be in that moment together. And so we do something that we both enjoy. And in fact, it's really fun because it brings a lot of other people into the conversation. Another thing that we'll do is we'll play the game Heads Up, where you have the app and the other person's trying to help you to guess. So we'll even play that in restaurants or if we're hanging out somewhere. And the amount of conversations that come up just by us playing games in public has led to just a great opportunity for us to have fun, but then also to invite others in. Here's something else that I think is hard, especially as an introvert. To build community, we have to say yes when we have an opportunity to be with new people, even when you don't want to. The only way to meet new people and to make new friends is to go. I tell new students when they come to school, so listen, if you're living in the dorms, make yourself keep your door open for the first couple of weeks. Make yourself go to things that are happening on campus just so you can meet new people. You see, once we start to make those connections, memories are then going to start to build, and it's going to become easier for you to continue to say yes. But first you have to go. You have to be brave and be willing to step out. And so we have to look for ways to get our friendship numbers up. How can we continue to meet new friends? Because remember, we want to build that support system so that we're insulated in our lives and not isolated. Here's another thing that I found to be really helpful. Build relationships with people who are like you, but also with those who are not in the same life stage as you. Sometimes we need to be with people who are just like us. For me, in my 30s, I had a hard time finding singles. And so that was something I was trying to do. But sometimes we also need to be with people who are different than us. One of my greatest friends is someone who is older than I am. And she's not only a mentor, but she has become just a dear friend with the ways that she invests in my life. And I also have former students who have become great friends and supporters of me. And they're significantly younger than I am. And then I have other people that have just been built into my life of all ages and stages, honestly. And so that way I just get to see a broader picture of God's love for me. We have to first start practicing, building, and starting new friendships. It takes work and it takes practice. And it can only happen by us stepping into those spaces and often initiating and just going and trying something new. And lastly, we have to protect the investments that we make into our friends. And what I mean by that is we need to be a good friend. We need to show up. We need to step into the hard. We need to be willing to deal with conflict. We need to trust that the Lord is going to move and work and help us grow. And so, friends, I hope that this is helpful, that it helps you to think through, here's who God has said community is in the book of Acts. And then this is what friendship is not. And now we're talking about what it is. And so I hope that as you start to think through some of the relationships you have in your life, do they match up with that definition, that equation that I gave you? Where any relationship between two people, where they both feel seen in a safe and satisfying way. And if you have some acquaintances, what can you do to start to build that consistency in those memories so that that relationship becomes safe and becomes consistent? I know it's hard, but it's worth it. It's worth to put in the time and the effort to build those relationships in our lives. Because God is, not only because God has created us like that, but because it brings so much hope and joy and peace and strength. It's one of the ways that the Lord loves us. And it's so much fun. Thanks.